I wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking about weight loss. You may have been told that you need to lose weight to do IVF. Obviously it's easier said than done. And even the body shaming that goes into that statement is something that can cause stress as well. So we're going to be talking about weight loss, how you can look at this completely differently and really to realize this is not your fault. There may be a biochemical issue going on in your body. So excited for you to listen to this episode and really have you look at weight loss completely differently. I would like to invite you and your partner to a Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery Call. This call is for you if you meet at least one of the following criteria. You've been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years. You've been through at least one failed IUI or IVF. This call is for action takers. If you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. If you're seriously considering work with us, go to fabfertile.com. That's fabfertile.com and click on apply here. That's fabfertile, fabfertile.com and click on apply here. Then you'll be booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. One theme that keeps coming up with the couples in our Fab Fertile Couples Coaching Program is sleep. Whether it's insomnia, having a hard time falling asleep, waking up at night, or feeling tired when we wake up, sleep is critical for fertility and hormones. And that's why I'm so excited to have Blue Blocks as our podcast sponsor. So we're exposed to blue and green light from our phones, our tablets, our computers, indoor lights, and more. And this exposure impacts our melatonin production. And melatonin is essential for both female and male fertility. It helps determine the frequency and duration of our cycle and impacts sperm. There's lots of blue light blocking glasses on the market, but the ones from Blue Blocks, they've actually compared other popular brands, and Blue Blocks block 100% of blue and green light, while other brands fall short. So I have their sleep glasses. They have red lenses, and the ones I have are a little translucent frame, and they're so stylish and really cool. And so they eliminate 100% of the blue and green light in the 400 nanometer to 550 nanometer range. So this is the exact range that has been shown in clinical studies to disrupt melatonin and negatively impact your sleep. So all you do is wear your sleep glasses after sunset until it's time for bed, and you'll notice improved sleep after just one use. And it's also cool to use when you're flying for managing jet lag. I got to say I was a little skeptical about the noticing improvement after one use, but literally I use these glasses and my sleep is actually already pretty good. I used them for one day, and I have to say, after one day, I had the best sleep of my life. I just felt so rested. So these glasses, they ship free and they're tracked for all orders anywhere in the world. And also they have all their frames come in prescription, non-prescription, and reading glasses. Plus you can send in your frames and they'll add the blue light blocking and green light blocking lenses to your frame. So this is an easy hack that you can add to your fertility toolkit. All you do is go to BlueBlocks, BlueBlocks.com. Use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast at checkout and receive a 15% discount. That's BlueBlocks, BlueBlocks.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast to receive your 15% discount. Hey there. Thanks so much for listening to the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast. And I've got a favor to ask you. If you are enjoying learning about the functional approach to fertility, consider going to iTunes and rating and reviewing the podcast. This is how it helps the show reach more people that are struggling with infertility, knowing that there's another approach that really can get to the bottom of why it's not working in the first place. So all you need to do is, if you're on the app or the desktop, just go in and consider leaving a 5-star rating and leave a review. And there is step-by-step instructions in the show notes showing you exactly how to do that. So if you can just take a few minutes, just take a few minutes right now. You can pause this recording, come back, leave the review. It would really mean the world to me and help others that are on the fertility journey as well. Take care. I didn't need to go to donor eggs. Obviously, I don't regret it. I have beautiful children. I could have done things differently, restored. I was still cycling back in my 20s. I could have looked at my health, the environmental toxins, the stress I was under.
Many women are being told their eggs are too old. That's often merely an assumption that's not based on actual evidence. The reason being that there is no direct test of egg quality. You can't test egg quality.
It's the man who's got a food sensitivity or he has a zinc deficiency.
Like, there can be a root cause to these symptoms that are, quote unquote, period problems, that the doctor will pass you a pill without any question of why.
And some part of you knows that if you can reframe your journey from not want to struggle, or if it is struggle, learn how to embrace the struggle. Learn how to embrace it.
Most conditions in the child occur during the 9 months of development. It's the genetic switches are turned on or turned off, and they're pre-programmed. So you are in such a powerful, amazing position to do amazing things for your kids.
You know, why is IVF the first step? Because we believe it should be the last step. Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby. Hey there, I'm Sarah Clark, founder of Fab Fertile and your host. I believe the functional approach is the first step for anyone struggling with infertility, and my aim is to help you get pregnant naturally. Today, I'm welcoming Dr. Bindiya Ghandi to the podcast, and we're digging into a functional medicine approach to weight loss. Dr. Bindiya Ghandi is double boarded by the American Board Family Medicine, as well as the American Board of Integrative and Holistic Physicians. She completed her family medicine training from Georgia Regents University Medical College of Georgia in 2014, and completed her undergraduate training at the University of Georgia and Bachelor's of Science in Biology and Psychology in 2004, and her Doctor of Medicine at American University of Antigua College of Medicine in 2010. Her interests include integrative, holistic, and functional medicine and women's health, preventative medicine, international medicine, and healthcare reform. Thanks so much for listening. I'm so thankful that you're here. Make sure you hit subscribe, and if you know someone else who is on the fertility journey, please share this podcast with them. Hey, Dr. Bindiya, excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So if you could share your journey and really how you came to do this work. I find many people that find the functional medicine thing, there's usually a reason why they found it.
So my journey to functional medicine actually started because, I was the patient, even though I had been in medical school and had been in residency and I had learned all this medical knowledge. Unfortunately, the current conventional medical model failed me. I was in residency. It was my second year and I had this rash on my face that would not go away. Around the same time, I also had GI issues, headaches, menstrual irregularities. I was breaking out all the time. So I had a lot of things going on, but it was the rash on my face that actually that was the reason why I needed to go to a functional medicine doctor and seek help. I had been to the best doctors in my residency program. I had tried every medication out there, from antibiotics, antifungal, steroids, you named it, and nothing worked and nothing improved. And I was actually devastated because every time I felt like this rash was getting better, it only came back with a vengeance and I couldn't figure it out. And I remember sitting there asking the allergist immunologist, am I allergic to something? Do I have an autoimmune condition? And he was like, nothing's wrong with you. Everything is fine. You're probably just stressed. You're an overworked resident. You're working like 100 hours a week. And I remember thinking that answer is unacceptable. And I just had to keep digging and digging. And I found a functional medicine doctor who's been a mentor to me since then, and found out that I actually had celiac. And so, for all those years, I had no idea, but it was my own personal journey that was the reason why I ended up deciding that I needed to pursue functional medicine, mainly to help other people.
Absolutely. And so, I do find it's like that dark night of the soul where you're like, wait a minute, you've got all these, and I had the same thing, these, weird rashes and like seemingly unrelated issues. And for me, I was diagnosed with premature ovarian insufficiency at 28. And then years later, the gut infections, the food sensitivities, all those things that you discover, and you kind of think, you're just treating the rash, whereas instead of, looking at the underlying reason why it's there to begin with.
Exactly.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking all about weight, and really, well, first of all, let's talk about how, like, many people that are on the fertility journey may have been told they need to lose weight to even be considered if they want to go for an IVF, which, it's easier said than done. And it's, I don't know, even like an old paradigm on that piece around weight and procedures. And I don't know, there's a lot of shaming and things like that involved with that. But what's your take from a biochemical side of things with weight and the impact on fertility and hormones?
Yeah. So, that's a really great question. It's not about, and I'm glad you brought that up. It's not about body shaming. It's not about that you need to be at a certain weight before you get pregnant, but it's really about making sure that you're healthy enough to carry on another child and produce the appropriate nutrients and that child needs. So when it comes to hormones, what I tend to see clinically in practice is females who typically have something called polycystic ovarian syndrome, or they have elevated testosterone levels, that can really impact your weight. And from a fertility perspective, that it is inhibiting ovulation. What we're trying to do is recommend that, let's change the trajectory. By you losing weight, you will also decrease the testosterone level and hopefully you will ovulate naturally, right? So that's just one example. Other hormones that impact your weight and also impact fertility, thyroid, right? So so many women have thyroid issues that they're unaware of, and sometimes they find out they have a thyroid issue when they're trying to conceive, and they're having difficulty trying to conceive. And then it's harder to lose weight when you have a thyroid issue, right? Because you have a hormone that's regulating your metabolism. But there are certain things, and we can talk about that later, of what you can do to just make sure that your thyroid level is healthy and optimal, especially from a fertility perspective.
Yeah, we'll talk about this in a bit, but yeah, sometimes people think it's like their fault, they can't use it. Meanwhile, there's something going on, underlying issues going on in their body. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so can you discuss the conventional approach to losing weight versus the functional medicine approach?
Yeah, so here's the thing. We're taught in medical school. The first thing that we're taught in our biochemistry class is if you want to lose weight, you need to be in a calorie deficient state, which means you need to eat less and you need to exercise more. And basically that means you will lose weight. That is the conventional old thinking model, right? That is not taking into consideration your hormones. That is not taking into consideration your lifestyle. That's not taking into consideration stress. And that's where the conventional model fails, because so many people are in a calorie deficient state. They've tried every diet in the book. They've tried keto. They've tried paleo. They've tried intermittent fasting. They've tried Atkins, whatever new fad diet possibly is out there. They've tried it and they're like, it worked for like a week and then it was hard to maintain. And I couldn't keep up with it because some of these diets are really extreme and you're limiting really essential foods that you may that your body actually needs to process, right? So that's where conventional medicine makes a mistake. Now, what we do in functional medicine is completely different, right? We are looking at so many different factors. Our job is to get to the underlying root cause of why you're having trouble losing weight or why you're regaining the weight after you lose it. And there's so many different reasons, right? Hormones are a big one, right? Especially hormones. Like hormones for females are, by the way, guys, you put a male and a female on the same protocol and diet, and a male will lose more weight than a female will. And that's just because he doesn't have the same hormones as we do. And so the same hormones that are impacting our weight are usually also the same hormones that are causing infertility. Estrogen's another one we haven't really talked about. Adrenals are another one, or DHEA or cortisol. So there's so many different things, blood sugar instability, so many different hormones that actually that we need to address to help us lose weight. But these are, again, the same hormones that impact fertility.
Yeah. And a lot of times it can be like, you're doing all those different diets and it's worked for someone, but not you. And we sometimes see that too, where a man and a woman can be on the same protocol. He's like losing weight like crazy and she's still not able to, to shift the weight. And then, it's the old adage where you do the diet and then, oh, you've lost all this weight. And then, oh, wait a minute, you slip up, you start eating back to your regular food. And next thing you know, you put the weight on plus more. I guess many people will hold it in their midsection and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, can you talk about why just diets just don't really work?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, diets are so extreme. That's the first one. There's so many different extreme diets out there. There's do a juice fast, do it this fast, do that fast. They're just too extreme, right? And they're short-lived. So people will lose maybe 5 pounds that first week. Half of that is probably water weight, right? And then they're like, oh my God, I can't keep this up because I'm starving and I'm hungry. We have hormones, and we haven't even talked about some of that hormones but there are hormones that are communicating with your brain. And they're like, the minute you start starving, your hormones in your body change, and that impacts you wanting to actually eat more. And so here you are dieting and you're like, but I'm so hungry. It doesn't make sense. Diets are also hard to follow. They're just hard to follow and they work for a little, but you regain it back. So people get discouraged, people get frustrated. And the biggest thing is, and this is the secret, guys, so many people have plateaus and so many people have weight stalls. And the reason that is happening is because your body thinks you're starving, because you are, right? Because you are. And when your body thinks you're starving, then you're going to hold on to weight. And the reason this is happening is because of a hormone called leptin. So leptin is a hormone that is produced actually in your fat cells. And what happens is in a normal, healthy individual, there's a communication that happens between your fat cells and your brain, your hypothalamus. That communication happens. So when we eat, our body gets the signaling that we're full. So we'll stop eating, right? And that should be great. But when we have other things going on, like blood sugar instabilities, our testosterone is maybe elevated, we have some inflammation in the body, maybe our thyroid is off, the communication gets jumbled with leptin. And so what happens is you're overeating, but that's not because it's your fault. It's because there's a miscommunication between your brain and your body. So you're eating because your body thinks it needs more food, but really you don't. You probably don't. And the other extreme of that happens is when you're dieting, because you're trying these extreme diets, and now the communication between your leptin and your brain, what's happening is your leptin is telling your brain that you're in starvation mode. So what ends up happening is you actually end up getting hungrier because your body is holding on to fat. When we are in a starvation phase, starvation famine mode, our body wants to hold on to the reserve because we don't know when we're going to get fed again. We don't know when our next meal is coming from. And that is why leptin actually becomes problematic. And instead, we are trying to do everything in the books not to eat that bag of chips or whatever's in front of us because we are so hungry. Because our body is getting this mechanism of we need to eat. Our body is starving. We need to hold on to food and fat. So this is a big problem. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of diets don't work and they don't work long term. And this is why it's problematic.
It's interesting. Yeah. You see people like maybe even having like one meal a day, or when you look at that, what they're eating, they're really not even eating that much. Like I eat like heaps of food all day long. And, it's also a genetic thing too. Like I don't have weight issues. For me, it was fertility. That's why we're on this podcast. But many people, they may even have a genetic propensity to that. Yeah. So can you talk about the leptin resistance and really, what is that? And you talked about, I guess, potentially some inflammation going on there. Can you dig deeper into that?
Yeah. So leptin resistance basically means when you have the miscommunication between your brain and your fat cells. And so when that miscommunication is off, that's what we call leptin resistance, right? Because we want that communication to be easy, free flowing, and we want it to be so smooth that your body knows when you need to stop eating and when you should be eating, right? Now, this gets disrupted, like I mentioned earlier, if you have blood sugar issues or metabolic resistance or insulin resistance. If you have underlying thyroid issues, stress, guys, is a huge one, especially in the last year. I've seen patients come to my office and they've gained 30 pounds in 6 months. And they're like, why? How did this happen? Nothing has changed. They're not doing anything different, right? Thyroid is normal. Other hormones are otherwise fine. But these are the things that this is why, because there's so many different factors when it comes to what's contributing to what's making you leptin resistant.
It's interesting too with some of the themes we see with people on the fertility journey, the blood sugar imbalance, the thyroid imbalance, and obviously chronic stress, our busy lifestyle, plus being on the fertility journey, that in itself has its own stressors.
And I will say, especially when it comes to fertility, leptin is a very important number. Now, one thing I will say is women that tend to be leptin resistant prior to getting pregnant usually are the ones studies have shown are the same women that tend to develop preeclampsia and other medical complications like gestational diabetes, gestational hypertension during pregnancy. So finding out if you're leptin resistant before pregnancy in your preconception days would be even great. So we can ensure that you have a healthy pregnancy.
Absolutely. And so, so how do you test for leptins? What's an optimal number? What are you looking for?
So leptin is usually tested by, making an appointment with your doctor, asking your doctor to check it. Now, not all doctors are going to check leptin because a lot of traditional conventional doctors are not aware of what leptin is and what it does and even how to interpret the blood work. So my suggestion would be working closely with a functional medicine provider and getting that lab tested. Now, you want to make sure that level is between 7 to 12. Now, if it is above 12, I will tell you, then we start seeing that you are leptin resistance. Okay. And if it's below 7, then that is the opposite, right? Where some people don't even know when they're hungry. They don't get the receptors of they're hungry. And that also impacts your weight. It also, usually I tend to see leptin being lower in people that have maybe eating disorders, people are on restrictive diets, people that work out all the time, and they actually need to get their leptin level up. So you really want it to be between above 3 to 7. That is like the perfect range. And even still, like even I will say we can even get it up until 12. But once it's above 12, for sure, you're definitely leptin resistance and we have to bring it down.
It's interesting about those hungry receptors because, like, again, people that'll just eat once a day. Like I know someone that she'll just eat dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Going the whole day because she's not hungry.
And here's the thing, right? So even more now important because intermittent fasting is such a big deal, right? Mm-hmm. There are some people who have tried intermittent fasting, a lot of females, and they're like, yeah, I eat at 8 p.m. at night and then I don't eat again until 12 a.m. 12 p.m. the next day and I'm not hungry. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, that's great, right? That's what you want maybe the first couple days. But when you continuously do that, what ends up happening over time, maybe you do want your leptin levels to come down, which is, if it's resistant, you want it to get down to a healthy range. But if it gets down to like 3 or even 2, 3, then guess what's happening is you're not getting the receptors to be hungry. And when your leptin levels are too low, that impacts your thyroid. It impacts your T3 production. It impacts your free T3 production. And so there's so many other things with low leptin that we actually need to talk about as well, because low leptin is just as bad as high leptin levels.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So let's talk about triglycerides and how that impacts leptins.
Yeah. So triglycerides are, for those people who don't know, it is basically fat that's produced by your liver. And triglycerides are important because they are the precursor to diabetes and also the precursor to fatty liver disease, right? So triglycerides will become elevated for numerous reasons, but what we're clinically seeing now, they will be elevated mainly from eating a lot of processed sugar, cane sugar, fruit sugars, or high fructose corn syrup, right? There is a link between fructose, fruit sugars, triglycerides, and leptin. So specifically, because leptin is also metabolized, I didn't even really get to talk about that, but leptin is also metabolized in your liver. So one of the things that I recommend is for many people is if you suspect that you're leptin resistant, the first thing that I have people kind of start experimenting with is limit your consumption of fruits, because even though fruit is healthy, fruit has fruit sugars, and fruit sugars impact your triglycerides. Right. And so when that impacts your triglycerides, that also impacts your leptin production. And it can be the reason why it's high or low or whatever, well, mainly high.
Mm-hmm. And then you talked a bit about the thyroid. And again, we see that with either subclinical thyroid issues, hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's. So how can you dig into the thyroid for us and leptins and weight loss?
So thyroid is important for weight loss for many things. So thyroid is a very complicated hormone. Thyroid impacts your metabolism. It impacts your hair growth, constipation, dry skin, fatigue, energy levels. It really is one of the master regulators. Now, even with your thyroid hormone, it's so complicated because everybody interprets the thyroid hormone a little differently, especially if you're going to conventional doctors versus an endocrinologist versus a functional medicine doctor. So when we're talking about your thyroid hormone, first of all, the question I ask is, is it Hashimoto's or not? Is it an autoimmune thyroid condition or not? Because that also impacts how that affects your other hormones, including leptin, but also impacts your weight, right? So that's the first thing. And also your energy, how you feel. Thyroid is also important because I look at the nitty-gritty numbers. I'm looking at your TSH, your T3, your free T3, your T4, your total T4, your reverse T3. I'm looking at all these different things, as well as looking at the things that convert your T4 to T3, like selenium, iodine, zinc. These things are so important because they all have a place to play when it comes to your overall metabolism. So when it comes to weight issues, a lot of people have weight issues and they're unaware that their thyroid is even off. And mainly because when they go to their practitioners, will look at their TSH only, and their TSH may be in range. It may be, and then a conventional doctor may look at it and say, okay, 3.0 is completely normal, right? And an endocrinologist may look at the same number and say, oh, that's normal. Now you go to a functional medicine doctor, they look at just your TSH at 3, and they're like, oh, no, we need some additional testing, because we can't just base anything off your thyroid based on one number. And we need to look at the whole picture. And so you really need to make sure you're having all the numbers checked and all the numbers interpreted appropriately, because when it comes to your thyroid, there's so many different versions of what could be going on with your metabolism. And like I mentioned earlier, if you're subclinical and you have low T3 syndrome, then that will also impact your leptin production. It can be the reason why you're leptin resistance, commonly what I see. And it can also be the reason why you're having difficulty losing weight. And stress is a big component to that. So there's so many different things that we need to look at when we're talking about our thyroid and how that impacts our weight.
Yeah, so many people on the fertility, I'd say almost like 99% of the people we work with, there's something going on with the thyroid. And people have just, like similar to me, where someone looked at my TSH, the physician, and told me, it was 3.5, it was normal. Meanwhile, my hair was dropping out. My hands were cold. My skin was as dry as a desert, and, everything's fine. Other people, it's subclinical. So they may not have symptoms, but then, there's food sensitivities and gut issues and other things that have been missed. So yeah, definitely looking at the full panel is key. Like you're saying, is that, the connection there with weight and leptin. So another clue to dig deeper. Yeah. And you've talked a little bit about blood sugar. So can you talk about that and what you're seeing with weight loss and leptins?
Yeah. So one of the things that unfortunately common in practice is so many people have metabolic syndrome, or so many people have insulin resistance. They're pre-diabetic. Now, when your insulin levels are off, there is a direct correlation between your insulin levels being off and blood sugars kind of circulating a little bit higher, as well as leptin resistance. So very common test that you can go to your, any doctor to just get a hemoglobin A1C checked at the minimum, at the basic, a fasting blood glucose. You can do that. Now there's things called fasting glucose or continuous glucose monitor that you can kind of wear. And that wearable technology is so amazing. So if you are able to have access to that, you can also track during the day what your blood sugars are doing. So many different ways of tracking to know if you have blood sugar issues, but even more importantly, before you get pregnant or early pregnancy, if you suspect something is going on with your blood sugars, because like I mentioned earlier, that has been linked to gestational diabetes later on in pregnancy. And that's actually can cause a lot of complications during delivery.
Do you have a continuous glucose monitor that you like, or because typically those need to be prescribed by a physician, right? Or I know there's some.
They do. There are some companies that you can purchase without a physician's order. Unfortunately, I don't wear one. I actually track my metabolic flexibility through something called Lumen. It's basically a device that you breathe into, and I will do this every morning. I should do it throughout the day, but I get busy when I'm at work. But I'll definitely do it in the morning, and then in the evening, and then sometimes even after or in between workouts. And the reason is I basically like to just track what my metabolic flexibility is, and if I'm in fat burning mode, or if I'm in a carb mode, because that helps me decide if I can eat a little bit more carbohydrates or if I need to just eat a little restricted. So that's kind of how I like to measure my, not really my blood sugars, but how well my body's in fat burning mode.
And how do you spell that one?
Lumen, Lumen.
Okay, that's what I thought. Awesome. And so it's just a device that you're breathing into?
Yep. You're just breathing into it, and you are just monitoring how well you're doing. And Oh my gosh, it's been a game changer for me. But I can honestly, I would imagine that if I had a continuous glucose monitor, it would be the same concept. It's kind of the same concept, similar, very similar, because you're tracking to see what you're eating, how your body's metabolizing what you're eating. Same kind of concept.
Yeah, I know they're starting to use those or they have been using them with elite athletes, really, so they can know exactly, wait a minute, when I have the whole sweet potato, it spikes, or I can only have like a quarter of a sweet potato. So
exactly.
You can personalize the whole diet just for you. Yeah.
Exactly. Love it.
So how do we reverse this leptin resistance and really start to shed the weight?
So, first thing that I will say is, again, I'm going back to the whole intermittent fasting thing, because so many women are doing it, and you could be doing more harm than good. So if you're intermittent fasting, and you have underlying thyroid issues, or you have other underlying issues, and especially if you're trying to get pregnant, it's probably not a good idea, right? Or if you're doing it, you need to work with a practitioner who's putting you on a very safe intermittent fasting protocol. So what I'm talking about is where it gets extreme, where you're doing 18 hours, 24 hours, 36 hours, probably not a good idea. So my recommendation that I first say is, at minimum, do a 12-hour fast. Okay. Because that will improve leptin, and it's not going to negatively impact your thyroid. That's usually a safe place to go. Nothing more than that, especially if you're trying to get pregnant. You definitely want to make sure you have enough calories and you're not inhibiting pregnancy because your leptin is too low. Okay. So we want to make sure that you're just eating, within an appropriate time. I usually tell people not to eat after dinner. So that's a good way to kind of remember that. So nothing goes into the mouth besides maybe water after dinner. But the other thing I like to do to kind of improve your leptin is time your meals. So ideally, we want to make sure we're eating 3 meals a day, limit the snacks, and we want to make sure that we're eating in a 4 to 6 hour interval. So we're making sure that our body is getting is responding appropriately from a blood sugar level. Starting off our day with protein is very, very important. That's actually key. That's one of the biggest mistakes a lot of people do, is even if they're intermittent fasting or whatever they're doing, the first thing they do is they'll go for a piece of bread or bagels or donuts or whatever. So you want to make sure you're getting some sort of protein in the morning. Optimizing sleep is so important. I know we take this for granted, and you've probably heard a million times you've got to sleep well, but you really should make sure you're getting good quality sleep, because that impacts your blood sugars, impacts your adrenals, your cortisol production. Again, that's so important for balancing your leptin levels. And then you just want to make sure that you're managing your stress, and again, this is probably something that so many people have heard of, but stress is another issue that impacts fertility. And there's so many different stresses, whether you're going through IVF or you're just trying to get pregnant naturally, trying to figure it all out. I mean, balancing your stress, and there's so many different ways, whether it's through meditation. There's so many apps out these days. I'm a big fan of hypnotherapy. I'm a big fan of acupuncture, breathing techniques. Working with someone, even a therapist, guys. Talk therapy is so great. Just learning how to manage your stress and how you're reacting to stress is so key and so important to just managing your overall health and well-being, but really important for leptin and just kind of making sure that we're in a very good state overall.
Do you have any other tips for sleep, or any kind of apps or wearables or anything?
Yeah. So, oh my goodness. Yeah. So my little sleep hack, I love these True Dark glasses. They're by True Dark, and I will wear them an hour before I go to sleep. They're kind of red light glasses. They were kind of funny looking. Kind of looks like I'm one of the characters off of Star Trek, but it's so cool because it really blocks all the light. And so important because so many of us I'm guilty too, guys. I get it. We're on our phones or watching TV. We're doing work on our computer at all hours. That disrupts our melatonin production, and that disrupts our circadian rhythm. So just making sure that we are, and even during the day, I wear blue light blocking glasses, just to minimize all the radiation my eyes and my retina is getting, because that really is so important for our overall circadian rhythm. And that's really helpful. And I love magnesium. That's my personal hack. I take magnesium every night. I'm also deficient in magnesium, so that's why. And I will say, I'm sure you see this in your patients too. Majority of females need a little bit of magnesium, and magnesium is so good in pregnancy. So great. Helps you sleep, helps you relax. so many different reasons why your body needs magnesium, but I love it to help me sleep. And melatonin is also another great supplement to take while you're on your fertility journey, because it helps with fertility. Studies have shown that it helps with that, but it also helps with sleeping. So many good benefits and so many things that you can try. But of course, you want to work with a practitioner. You want to work with someone who can tailor these specifically for you.
Awesome. Yeah. Like 80% of us are deficient. I think 80% of us are deficient in magnesium. Do you do a drink, or you just do the pill beforehand, or what are you doing?
I do the pill. I don't like to drink things like after midnight or after dinner, unless it's like water or like some herbal tea. So I personally will take magnesium pills, and I'm like, oh, I'll swallow it and I'll be fine.
And what about omegas and leptin resistance? What are you seeing there?
Yeah. So, so omega is so important because when it comes to inflammation, inflammation is another problem when it comes to leptin resistance. So we want to make sure that we're minimizing any form of inflammation that we can, right? And so working with a practitioner, you can identify if you have any inflammatory issues that are coming from your GI tract or anything else, right? If you have an autoimmune condition and that kind of thing. But omega-3 fatty acids are so good for decreasing inflammation in general and improving your leptin levels. So it's really one of my favorite supplements to go to for patients.
And what about the anti-inflammatory diet? Like, what are you giving specific dietary recommendations there? Or you talked about sugar, like fruits and things like that, but anything else on the anti-inflammatory diet?
Yeah. So the anti-inflammatory diet is a good generalized diet to go to. When I work with my patients, I do a lot of more one-on-one personalized catering, based on their labs and based on like food sensitivities and that kind of thing. But anti-inflammatory diet is a good general diet to make sure that you're getting enough antioxidants, to make sure you're getting enough adequate lean protein in there, making sure you're getting good veggies. Again, limiting your fruit consumption if you suspect you're leptin resistant. Not everybody needs to limit their fruit consumption, right? Not everybody needs to be to take that away. But if you're insulin resistant and maybe leptin resistance, that's a good thing to try.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything that you're obsessed with right now, be it a book, a website, an app, a documentary, anything you're just like thinking is great and wanted to share?
Oh my goodness. What am I obsessed with right now? I know this sounds so awful. But I'm really obsessed with, my personal time. That sounds awful, but I'm all about just taking care of myself. I'm a busy mom with 2 kids, running a practice, taking care of them. So anytime that I get some free time, I honestly just cherish it. And I love to work out. That's my thing. And I love to just read. So I'm reading so many different things right now. But one of the things that I'm kind of reading is more business stuff. So that's what I'm doing on my free time.
Nice. Very nice. And is there a success story you wanted to share with us around leptin resistance, weight loss, anything? I'm sure you have lots. Anything you want to share with us?
Yeah. So one thing I will say is, and kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, is a lot of times people, whether they're intermittent fasting or they've restricted their calories for years, they've kind of they've changed their metabolism. And so I will tell you so many stories about when I actually tell women to actually eat food throughout the day. They actually are so surprised because they're like, oh my God, I'm losing weight like all the time. And it's kind of remarkable because we're changing the story and we're changing the trajectory of you need to starve yourself to lose weight. When you are actually eating nutrient-dense food throughout the day that your body yearns and wants, not only are you resetting your metabolism, but you feel good. Your hair is not falling out. You have more energy and you actually lose the weight. And I know people are like, are you serious right now? Yes, I am. Like very serious. Seriously, eat more food. Don't be in a calorie deficient state. Don't think you have to starve yourself, because by starving yourself, you're doing more harm than good to your metabolism.
And where can the listeners find you?
So you can find me at www.drbindiya.com. So that's drbindiyamd.com. And that is my handle on Instagram at drbindiyamd, Facebook, LinkedIn, everything. That's where you can find me if you're interested in working with me. My practice is Revive Atlanta MD. That's ReviveATLMD.com. So ReviveATLMD.com. And we are located in Atlanta. So yeah, thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, awesome. And do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with us?
No, one thing I will say is, so many people suspect that they have issues and so many people are told that nothing is wrong with them. Mm-hmm. But I tell you guys, encourage you guys to ask questions. I encourage you to find the right provider who will work with you, who understands you and can guide you in the right direction, because we exist, we're out there. And we're happy to take on your case. So you just have to do a little digging. But I want you to be an advocate to your own health, because it's so important. And you know yourself more than anyone else does. And if you believe that there is something going on with you, whether this could be the reason why you're having fertility issues, or this can be the reason why you're having trouble weight, just seek out the right appropriate help and you will get the answers that you need.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dr. Bindiya. Yeah, really be your own advocate and listen to your body. It's trying to tell you something, and you know your body best. So I love that. And thanks so much again for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me today.
I would like to invite you and your partner to a Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery Call. This call is for you if you meet at least one of the following criteria. You've been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years. You've been through at least one failed IUI or IVF. This call is for action takers. If you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. If you're seriously considering work with us, go to fabfertile.com. That's fabfertile.com and click on Apply Here. That's fabfertile, fabfertile.com, and click on Apply Here. Then you'll be booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. Melatonin is important for female fertility. It helps regulate hormones and maintain the body's circadian rhythms. Plus, it helps determine the frequency and duration of the menstrual cycle. Plus, it impacts sperm count and motility. Blue and green light negatively impact our melatonin production. That's why we recommend Blue Blocks, blue and green light sleep glasses to all our one-to-one clients. Simply go to Blue Blocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast at checkout to receive your 15% discount. That's Blue Blocks, BLUBLOX.com, and use the coupon code GetPregnantPodcast. The Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, including show notes and links, provides information with respect to healthy living, nutrition, lab testing, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without representation or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.